Welcome to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm Rebecca, your host, and together we'll explore the spirit of beauty, how beauty invites new possibilities, enlivens us to inhabit our innate creativity, and connects us more deeply with ourselves and with each other. We'll have conversations and share reflections that invite you into a frequency of gentleness, truth, and mystery. I'm so glad you're here. If you find the Liberating Beauty Podcast meaningful, please consider supporting our work. To donate, follow the link in the show notes to the Together in Beauty website, home to this podcast, along with other offerings to accompany you on your journey of spiritual becoming. Please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast wherever you listen. And as always, thank you for your support and for being here with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here today as we continue our mini-series on creativity, one of beauty's kindred expressions. And if you haven't already, I'd invite you to go back and listen to the episodes, This Too Is Love, and the feeling of creativity that set up the relationship between beauty and creativity, and where I say a little bit more about why creativity is so enlivening to me. But for today, honestly, I knew it was really just a matter of time before I had our guest on the show. I met Ryan Erisman a number of years ago. I was teaching in a social innovation and sustainability leadership graduate program, and Ryan was one of the grad students. And there's this really humbling thing that happens when your students have these incredible and inspiring life circumstances and experiences, and you start to ask yourself, who's teaching who, which, it's probably always the case. But I would come to find, and through learning more about Ryan, that he had led Marines in combat and in counterinsurgency in Iraq. He'd come back and he has this farm, a 32-acre farm where he implements regenerative practices, and he's really interested in systems thinking and design thinking and living a meaningful life, and somehow finds connection between what on the surface could seem like these disparate experiences, and yet he finds the connection point and the alignment. But really, more than anything, I noticed with Ryan is, for all of these incredible experiences that he's had, and perhaps because of them, his quality of presence and attunement in everyday moments was really striking. And it started me thinking about the relationship between presence and creativity. What's available when we're able to really hone in on what's happening right now and not being distracted by what's going to happen in the future or what has happened. What's available when we're able to conserve the energy for this moment and to notice what is revealed, second by second. So I really loved this conversation. I'm excited for you to listen. There's so much here for all of us about living a creative life, living in presence in our day-to-day. So I hope that you enjoy listening to this episode. I know I really enjoyed my time with Ryan and learning more about how he lives in presence, and also how he lives into a creative life. Ryan, I'm so pleased to have you on the show today as we continue our mini-series on creativity. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Ryan, I've always really appreciated how you think and how you make connections in this really unique way, which no doubt will come up throughout our conversation. But I'm remembering when we first met a number of years ago, the thing that stuck out to me the most about you was your quality of presence, an openness to being in the here and now. And I'm sharing this as we get started because I sense that there is something in the attunement to this moment that holds one of the keys for living a creative life and an authentic life, or I may even say like opening to creation. So if you can, I would love for you to take us a little bit of a journey with you of what it feels like when you are really present in whatever way, in whatever form, in whatever experience. What does that actually feel like to be you?
Okay, we're not starting with a softball question. What does it feel like? I guess those moments feel, I don't know, like the perfect high. Everything is in sync. There's plenty of energy, not frazzled energy, not like excess energy, but just like I have all the energy I need to handle this. I'm taking in all this information. I see what's around me. I see what is going on in the moment. There's opportunity. It's kind of unfolding. Like those moments of real presence. And I don't think I would have connected it to being present at the time. Certainly not going back to where I think of one of those, like some of my most powerful experiences of being really present and on is actually in Iraq. And we're going back 19 years ago to my second deployment where I commanded a rifle company. So fully fleshed out, we're about 170 some guys. For any operation, I couldn't take that many outside the wire because we had to actually leave guys back for security, and then you'd bring on other attached units like sniper teams, combat engineers, etc. We'd execute operations with between 100 and 150 Marines easily. And I can remember one of those, like mid-deployment, after we had done several big operations and really worked together as a company for about 9 months back in the States. And then we were in our 3.5 months in Iraq, late April, leaving on an operation one morning. And like we'd already had to replace the lead gun truck in the convoy. We actually walked ahead of all of our trucks to find the IEDs by eyeball instead of with the vehicles, which was, people thought that was a crazy tactic, and yet it worked really well, which required us to be very present in the moment and looking and aware. But I walked past the replaced lead truck, since the previous one was blown up the night before, and those Marines had been medevaced, and a new machine gunner who also happened to be one of our best machine gunners, and he's in this position where he's overlooking he can see everybody. He's riding in a truck that's 12 feet in the air. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, Loggins, do you have us covered from up there? Like, do you understand your job?" And he's actually the biggest guy in the company. And he pats the machine gun, like literally pats where the ammunition feeds into the weapon. And he's like, "I got your back, sir." And I thought, all right, wow. Okay, when the most respected Lance Corporal in the company says that, that means something. And I remember walking down the road along the base of the formation where I could see everybody control, which is also kind of the danger spot. On the road is the most dangerous place for the IEDs. And yet you never ask your guys to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. So once in a while, I'd also take my place in the rotation on the danger spot. And I look behind me and I look in front of me, and there's palm trees highlighted by sunrise along the Euphrates River. We're turning down across this irrigated farmland. It's actually, when you remove the war from it, Iraq was a beautiful place. And I remember just thinking is like, yeah, I was built for this. Everything I had trained for in my adult life. I joined Naval ROTC when I was 18. I took Lima Company to Iraq when I was 32. I'd been training my whole adult life for doing exactly this. And I just felt like, this is right. This is the moment. We know what we're doing. And I feel on that buzz of being ready, being aware, and being very much connected to the Marines around me and even to the Iraqis around me, with specifically the villages in that region and the Abu Isa tribe. So that was that was the intensity. And I think that's probably what we've been calling the combat high for decades without actually understanding all the neuroscience behind it. So that's what it is at its most intense. But I can think of moments on the farm. I run almost antique machinery, and it's not the same level of intensity, but you have to be very present running a combine that's 60 some years old, and it's all open station. There's no cab, there's no electronics. Like, it's literally a diesel engine turning this, very complex piece of machinery behind me that also has a lot of weak points in it. And literally I can feel both machines working with and occasionally against each other, and sense a sound, a change in vibration, the slightest slowing down. And that's, my dad called it empathy with the machine. Can you really feel what this thing is doing and work with it and guide it, and not do something stupid and push it too hard to break it?
I love that. I particularly love going back to Iraq for a second when you said, I was built for this. And there's the feeling of when you're in exactly the place. God, I was made for this moment. I was made for this feeling. Can you say just a little bit more about literally what that feels like, to know that you've been built for this moment?
Lucky, empowering. I had spent a lot of years in the Marine Corps, pre 9/11, kind of studying small wars and counterinsurgency, which is, the Marine Corps had a history of doing that kind of stuff. There were a lot of lessons out of that written down, and in some cases kind of forgotten. And I got into reading about that stuff pre-World War II, tracking it, following it, and understanding it. And so coming to Iraq the second time around by 2007, where we were doing counterinsurgency and trying to mature that counterinsurgency movement and hand more and more security over to local Iraqi forces, it just felt right. It was like, and I was in a rural region. I was a farm kid. I went to the Marine Corps to get away from farming, and suddenly found myself teamed up with the Abu Isa tribe. And I asked one, and we were literally across the river from Fallujah, and I asked one of the sheikhs one day, I was like, what is wrong here? We're doing all this work with the Fallujah IPs, we, the Marine Corps, 6th Marine Regiment. And it's like, why? You guys can't get along. Like, we're really struggling to get everybody to cooperate here. What's going on? And the translation that comes back is essentially, all the money goes to Fallujah, all the support goes to Fallujah. Your government, my government are both doing everything for the cities like Fallujah and Ramadi, and we are treated as the number 2. We are second-class citizens because we live out here and we farm. And this gets translated back to me, and I'm like, wow, okay, now I get this. And at the same time, I was kind of, because I would say stuff to entertain myself, I'm like, hey, I'm from Illinois, and all our money goes into Chicago, and none of it comes back downstate to support us. I'm like, that was funny to me. And it gets translated, and the sheikh's eyes light up. And he's like, Nam, Chicago, Fallujah, same, both ruled by gangsters. And at the time, George Ryan was in jail, and Rod Blagojevich was the governor who would be going to jail. And it lined up. But that I realized, like, what started as a kind of a joke became an understanding that this tribe, though wealthy at the top, a lot of the people felt forgotten by first their own government and then by the U.S. military. And so I kind of had this sense of connection, less so to the sheikhs, who I'm pretty sure never actually got on one of those tractors and did any work, than to some of the lieutenants and regular guys in the local indigenous security forces, militias. We weren't allowed to call them militias at the time, and they were militias, who I identified with, like the regular family men who had a home, had a little place, had a little bit of land, had, some date palm trees, and grew a patch of wheat on, irrigated ground. It's like, yeah, I get this. Like, I see where they are. And honestly, we were so far away from the major bases that we were living on pretty crappy resupplies, like MREs and gas station snacks was essentially our food. So Marines learned early on, you want to eat well, you go out on patrol. And the Iraqi hospitality was phenomenal. I mean, they would hand you fresh hobas, flatbread, right off the griddle on an outdoor cooking fire, or, you know, and invite you in and feed you, because we treated them with respect and dignity. And over time, people started to, that's one of the things they want to do is feed you. And eventually, we figured out this trick of, I don't use my trucks as much as most other units did, because you can't engage people and get to understand their situation when you ride around in armored vehicles. So the trucks always followed behind us. So I had this excess of diesel fuel. We started trading diesel fuel to Iraqis to buy sheep. And we would slaughter and cook up fresh meat for ourselves in the patrol bases and out on, we first started doing it on long distance operations when like a resupply one night didn't happen because helicopters were grounded in Al Assad due to a dust storm, which happened fairly often. So yeah, we just figured it out. It's like, hey man, we'll live off the local economy and we'll pay our own way in diesel fuel. So yeah, there's some creativity like in the moment. Hey, I've got a surplus of this and it works way better than giving them chits or cash.
I'm so struck by the way you describe what it's felt like in those situations. Though I don't have any personal relationship to where you've been and what you've done, but my own feeling of when I am creating and when I feel creative feels remarkably similar to what you're describing. A feeling of, I know exactly where I am. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. And I don't know that I would have used exactly the same language, but it's exactly that feeling of I was built for this moment. I'm curious what you, or if you find a relationship between that quality of presence and being available to what's happening and the feeling of creativity.
Presence is probably, I've never made the connection to presence. I know when I am present and working in the shop or on something, and I'm thinking now, like as a farmer and as somebody, you know, around animals and stuff like that. Yeah, the creativity, I guess it flows when you're open to it, when you're very much there in the moment. I mean, in my world, stuff breaks and goes wrong all the time. I work with very old machinery. That's how I afford to have the stuff I have, is I find junk and then I fix it up. And that's one skill set, but sometimes it happens at very frustrating times. And sometimes it just, instead of saying, oh, I should be finished by now, like this should have happened. And I can remember having moments where it's like, no, I have all the skills to fix this right now, right here in the moment. My combine, the first one I had, a John Deere 30 from the 1950s, had, you know, all wooden spokes on the reel that kind of batted grain into the header. And it was ground driven. And so it hit a big slug of green material one time. And because there's no way for it, no clutch, nothing for it to slow it down, the drive wheel just kept pushing and literally it snapped and twisted that thing into just sticks. And I remember just thinking like, oh God, here we go. And picked up the header, drove back to the shop, and I thought, man, this is all oak 1x1 material. Okay. In 2 hours, I took that whole side apart, took out all 6 spokes, figured out what the template and the dimensions were, and started pushing stuff through a table saw and a bandsaw. And then they were like half round cuts where they went around a hub, and I ended up cutting them with a large round drill bit and a drill press. So like saving myself a step by cutting them in half by making that round with the cuts. And then, you know, you finish them with a block plane to make them fit in. I was back in the field in 2 hours. And I remember having the feeling like that broke, and I had all the tools and all the skills to fix that. And a buddy of mine, I sent him a picture with, you know, the new spokes on there and a picture of the block plane sitting next to the header. And he just laughed. He's like, man, all the people who know how to do that are, you know, somewhere between retired and dead. But yeah, and it's a funny little thing. Like, okay, yeah, great. You can fix antique machinery, but being present in the moment and not frustrated with when something isn't working out for you keeps me open to doing the work and figuring out a way to solve the problem without fighting it.
Right. I just experienced a version of that with you just in the last couple hours. We were having some technical issues, and I noticed in you a remarkable calm that didn't feel performative. Because you can tell when people are like, "Yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine," but like there's a anxiety about it, and it made me think of something you said when we were talking in preparation for the show last week about something about the conservation of energy and the availability of creativity when there's energy available for it. I don't know if I'm making the connection here as you were sharing it last week, but it feels like part of what I'm hearing you saying is when there's a challenge and you believe that you have the capacity to be with it, you're able to distribute your energy in such a way that you can find a creative solution in a way that's meaningful. Is that what you were talking about with the redistribution of energy?
Yeah, and and this is a base, like I start a lot of workshops that I teach with this, or and I've brought clients through this with coaching, is introducing this concept of energy returned on energy invested. I first learned about it years ago. It was in a Daniel Christian Wall book on what is it? Regenerating cultures, something about regenerative cultures, but it's Daniel Christian Wall. But the concept is actually from the petroleum industry. It's all about how much is out there in that oil field underground, what's it going to take for us to get to it versus what are we going to get out of it. So it's return on investment, but they think of it in terms of total energy. And I just attached myself to that. And I was like, oh my God, that is sustainable agriculture. That is life. Like, how much energy are you going to put into something and what's it going to give back to you? And don't spend a whole lot of time putting energy towards things that don't give back somewhere, even if it's not to you. If it's in the bigger picture, great. But if it's just a rat hole, then recognize that and stop. And anger and frustration, which I am certainly susceptible to, are those kinds of rat holes of you're giving a lot of energy to this thing that just takes and it gives nothing back. So yeah, the letting, part of that is with letting go, which of just finally realizing that, hey, I don't need this, if it's not going to happen today, that's fine. Making peace with letting go of something. And then you realize, oh, this burden is now off me and I have time and space to give my energy elsewhere. So this year I've been doing pastured pork between this farm and the first farm that I leased for 12 years. I think this is my 13th season, but it took me years to get grass-fed beef here because I had to fight for butcher dates. Finally, I've been raising grass-fed beef for 3 years, and then due to the beef market this year, I was priced out of it. So I had customer demand, but I had to tell people, like, for what it's going to cost me to buy an almost 2-year-old, a few 2-year-old animals and put a few 100 pounds on them and turn around and finish, a grass-fed product for you, like, I'm not even going to break even unless I charge you a ridiculous amount of money based on what they're charging right now. And I know a lot of farmers in that position. And so I kind of had to, like, I worked so hard to start doing grass-fed beef and figure out the infrastructure here. And then I had to let go of it. And I make more of those decisions with gut feeling now of what's it feel like, just kind of you test drive it. What's it feel like to not have to do this? And it's like, oh, I have some more opportunity. I have some more time here. I have some income loss, but okay, how am I going to make up for that? What are the chances? And so that's what I'm learning is, when letting go gives me, when I test drive the idea of letting go of something or saying no to things, and like, oh, well, that feels right. I have more energy in the letting go than the should. You should do this, you should do that. We end up shoulding all over ourselves. So yeah, that's kind of become a little bit of my metric in the last year as I've run these workshops and I'd introduce it to other people. And then because I'm talking about it, I'm getting better at applying it in my own life.
Oh, right. I really want to go into this more because there's a question I ask myself a lot, and I struggle to know where I land in the moment in situations that are where there's a question about letting go, and there's this dance between feeling like when something is really pushing me to my edge. Sometimes I have a hard time discerning, is this something I need to learn, and there's an importance of the struggle and staying with it, or is this masochism? And I honestly don't know sometimes in the moment. When you ask yourself this question of what does it feel like to let go, does that bring some clarity, some direction about whether there's something here that's yours to fight for? Like, or what kind of clarity do you notice emerging when you ask yourself, well, what would it feel like if I let this go?
This is only a very recent discovery on my part. I mean, if you talk about the masochism, remember, I was in the Marine Corps for a decade. And raised Catholic. So the whole idea of hard work is good for you and suffering is, even better, has taken me till middle age to realize, oh, maybe those aren't true. So with the gut check of letting go, decisions around, I've asked to go participate in an event somewhere. They'd like to have me there. And it sounds good. It would be for a good cause. And yet I look at all the other things, especially this time of year, 2 businesses, kids in, sports, other stuff going on. And just I feel bad. And then if I think about it, it's like, oh, but I feel better knowing I'm not gone for that weekend. And I'm around for, when my kids get back. I actually have a rule since I've been divorced is I really try not to be on the road or doing other stuff on the weekends that my kids are here. So there is a presencing phenomenon that happens with divorce is suddenly when your life is split that way, you have your kids at these times and you don't have your kids at these times oh, when I have my kids, it's parent time, focus on them. Especially my kids were 8. I have twins when I got divorced. And so I really needed to be very much focused on, now they're 15. And so it's, I don't have to be worried about what their every minute is occupied with. But I still feel the obligation to be around for them because they won't, feel the obligation to be around here that much longer. So, I guess that's part of where I learned that presencing as well, and just that gut sense of what does option A feel like? What does option B feel like? And I'm very much spreadsheet logic kind of guy, or I think I was raised that way, and I'm leaning more and more into gut intuition because I can always do the spreadsheets and the logic. That's a default mode. That's easy. But now adding in the gut feeling, and I'm getting more comfortable with letting go and say, hey, that opportunity passed. Okay, don't worry about it. Move on. And that's warfare. That's farming. I've just spent a lot of time in environments where opportunities are fleeting, and circumstances change rapidly. And what is a good idea and is going to work this week is gone in the next minute or gone next week.
Huh. It's interesting that you said that it's easy for you to go to the spreadsheet and do the logical reasoning around making a choice, but you're learning to trust the intuitive sense of things. I would have pegged you for the intuitive guy. It's that would have been the strong leaning based on the experiences. So it's interesting that when you reflect on yourself, you're like, oh, no, I can go to logic really easily, but I'm learning to be to be. I'm learning to be in a way that it is trust-based, trust in my own experience, trust how something feels. And I do wonder to what extent being in a situation like Iraq, where the stakes are so high, I mean, like life and death, that the kind of presence, the kind of attunement to that, to the moment, what that does in terms of building that muscle and building that capacity to be, because your life depends on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you get there other than just inoculation to the continuous stress and getting used to it. So yeah, I'm one of those people that doesn't. I'm all over the map on personality tests, depending on like when and where and what situation you give it to me in. And I can fall on either side of the line between the gut judgment and the spreadsheet thing. If I have time, I'll take a lot of time. If I don't have time, I can it was a running joke in rapid planning sessions. Hey, if we wait till the last minute, this only takes a minute. So yeah, where it's hard for me to articulate learning to do that. I mean, the Marine Corps does a great job of training officers, and very specifically infantry, into it's Boyd's OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. And warfare itself is based on not who's the best, but who has the faster OODA loop. How much faster can you observe, orient, decide, and act than your opponent? All you have to be is faster. And so that, when you start to understand that cycle and you kind of see yourself in that cycle of just make the decision. And they kind of teach you that. We call it 70% solution of rapidly executing a half-assed plan right now with extreme violence and teamwork is way better than a perfect plan executed too late. And that's warfare, that's a specific environment. But yeah, it's kind of where you learn. That's where I was trained, at least in a lot of that decision making, which is a lot of training and discussion and after action of somebody else telling you where you went wrong. That's all of infantry officers' courses. We set you up for conditions to make a decision under impossible situation, and then we tell you why you were wrong.
Yep.
But you start to learn. You start to kind of put together, sort of a set of algorithms of like what feels right in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, as I hear you talking, what I feel like you've been trained to do is how quickly can you trust yourself? How quickly can you trust what you're noticing in this moment? Also be willing to hear feedback about, where your intuition may have been off, or you may have sensed something. And to me, when I hear you talking, it's about, can I get to trust? How quickly can I get to trust and clarity?
Yeah. And I'm aware when I don't know enough to make a decision sometimes, where I feel like, I don't have a sense of this. Like I'm not getting a definite pull in either direction.
Right.
Which is, if you have the time, then you let that one lie, and you take the time till you have more information, or you kind of push, like, see what happens if I do this or this. We used to call that developing the situation. Like, what can you do to not get decisively engaged with the enemy, but to kind of push a few buttons to see, it's like, okay, is this a main attack, or is this just a feint? What do we want to do to force them to play a hand a little bit so we can see what they're up to? Right. We always put it in the active voice, develop the situation, but honestly, sometimes you're just waiting to let the situation develop itself.
I mean, that feels really relatable to me, because we're always in situations like that. I mean, I'm in a situation like that right now at work. How is this gonna pan out? How's this program gonna go? And sometimes the decision in the moment is to allow the situation to develop and to see what happens. And so it's not always about you have to know right now, but to know that waiting is actually that's a good use of energy. It's an intentional waiting to see how things play out. I like that.
The shift from warfare to farming is, things slow way down.
Yeah.
You do something, and then, we got to wait till the end of the season to see what the results are. In the first one, it's like results can happen faster than you can make the decision. And in farming, sometimes the results happen, and I have to go back to my notebooks to remember what the hell did I do in the first place to get me here.
Well, that's fascinating. The piece about time. One of the things I've been most curious about, and we've talked about it at length. How do you find that feeling of meaning, purpose, or even just be able to see the result of decisions that you make when the stakes aren't so high? How do you reintegrate into everyday moments? You've quoted Elliot Ackerman, another Marine and also an author, who's talked about writing the crystal meth of purpose, and you come back to your regular life and you're like, oh my God, how do you find that feeling again when the dial goes way down?
That, hearing him say that, it was, I heard him on Fresh Air, Terry Gross's show, being interviewed.
Yeah.
And then I immediately got his book. The book at that time was Places and Names. And what he's talking about is, he said, it doesn't matter what the mission is. You're fighting to accomplish this task with a group of people who are going to know you better than anyone else is going to know you for the rest of your life. And because living under, essentially suffering together, is how you really truly know people. And both the training of the military, very much the Marine Corps, and then the conditions of living in combat situations, is that you suffer a lot, you get to know each other very well. And now when you're in the fight, you're trying to accomplish the task, but ultimately you're there fighting for each other. And so he called that freebasing the crystal meth of purpose. And he said, when you get out, if you live through this, you're going to have to repurpose yourself. And then the challenge will be, everything tastes like Coors Light. And it was interesting that interview happened within weeks of me attending the Institute for Collective Wellbeing's first Wellbeing Summit, which was 2021. It was online. It was like a world-attended conference of a lot of practitioners and researchers and grad students. And Dr. Julia Kim from Bhutan's Gross National Center for Happiness did a presentation on, here are the 4 principles of well-being. And she talks about purpose and relationships and presence and, help me out, I forget the 4th one. It's understanding. I can't think of the 4th one, but it was 3 that were relevant. And then she asks, I want you to think of a time when you had the most intense experiences around 1, 2, or 3 or 4 of these things. And I flashed back to that, literally that moment in Iraq I described earlier, where Loggins, patted his 50 cal machine gun, said, I got your back, sir. Like right to that point. And I thought, oh man, we're talking about well-being. I went to a combat zone. Like, that's messed up. I kind of mentally Rolodex through, stuff with my kids and things on the farm and, paddling with my girlfriend and, other, like, yeah, all good. But none of them was like the kick in the gut. Oh no, this is that moment. And of course it's online. So there's breakout sessions and everybody has to share. And I go last and nobody says anything. And all of a sudden, one woman leans forward and she said, thank you very much for sharing that. And she said, quite honestly, we never would have made the connection between combat and well-being. She goes, that seems counterintuitive, and yet the way you explain it, it now makes perfect sense. But she said, nobody here has the street cred to share that experience or make that connection. She goes, but you do. That I'm at the tail end of grad school, and all of a sudden, like within a couple of weeks, I have these 2 epiphanies. Is I figure out this thing from that conference, and I hear Elliot Ackerman say something very similar, and I start going down the rabbit hole of trying to understand well-being. It's like, well, wait a minute, this is what we've been calling the combat high. Now, what are those elements again, and how do you reprogram and find those things without having to suffer and get shot at and, throw yourself into danger adrenaline situations all the time? And so that's that's been a lot of my work. And honestly, it was a lot of it was understanding those principles that really have helped me sort of adapt and thrive now.
Well, and actually, that's the question that I'm most curious about, because there's a level of creativity and openness in being able to translate an experience like that and to still be able to find meaning, connection, joy in the everyday. And I imagine, based on the conversation we've had, I mean, that's going to be something you're asking yourself and living into for the rest of your life. And yet, I think you have some insights already. Like, where and how have you come to start opening to and experiencing that kind of connection, sense of thriving, perhaps more gently, peacefully in your day to day?
I run enough workshops with this stuff now that if you talk about it enough, you get better at applying it. And this wasn't part of the original, like the well-being framework. I've in some ways spun off a slightly different version of the framework and added more to it at like a larger level of like both individual and organizational. I really got into starting with gratitude, like practice gratitude first as just a way to set yourself up for the positive. And I'm the last person to be like Pollyanna, positive thinking. That's not my entry point normally. But again, I can go to when things go wrong and I can still go, oh yeah, I got a way out of this. I'm good. So that's my version of like practicing gratitude is, yeah, this is messed up and it's not that bad. We'll be okay. I'll figure this out. And that de-escalates anger and, stress hormones and opens you up to being creative and then being present, noticing what's going on right now in the moment. And that's the external, but it's also noticing self. Like I'm far more aware of when I'm excited. I can be aware of like when it's like, why is this eating at me? When I'm frustrated and something like I'll be constantly playing something in my head and just like, okay, name that. Like, what is that? And then try to trace back. It helps to come up with mnemonics that people can remember. So I call it WTF. I'm like, okay, when you experience an emotion like WTF, and of course everybody in the room is like, oh yeah, I get that. And I'm like, it's why this feeling.
I love it.
And you back into it. So in other words, feeling, name the feeling, okay? And then name the thought. What's the thought that drove you to that feeling? Yeah. And then what's the why? Like what's the story that you've been telling yourself that drives you to having this kind of triggered reaction? It's not unlike the stress inoculation of decision-making from the Marine Corps, is if you start doing these little things every so often, you do get better at them. You do start to go, oh, wait, I'm triggered. And it's not that I'm no Buddhist monk. Like I can't catch the feeling in the moment and, neutralize it and remain calm and you'll never see me, with no facial expression. Like I'll get triggered and I'll yell at somebody on, the belt line and then kind of like, okay, yep. Just chill. Like everything's good. Everybody's trying to get somewhere and we're all stuck in 5 lanes going to 4 right now and frustrated by it. And letting go wasn't originally a part of that, the well-being framework, but it's a huge part of mine because I think both in combat, loss happens. Things don't go well. Circumstances change super fast. And in farming, in life itself, nature is constantly breaking down the recently dead in order to feed new life. That's what nature does. Nature composts things. And so the farmer perspective on letting go is a little different of like this is the life cycle. Something always has to die. The whole regenerative ag movement has gotten a lot of momentum and everybody it's been co-opted, used and abused. There's some people who are truly deeply regenerative and some people that are, doing it in name only with a couple techniques. But Yonggi Mingyur Rinpoche, who wrote, I think it's How to Die Every Day and In Love with the World. He has a quote in there, he said, "There is no regeneration without death."
Oh, I love that.
And just accepting that you can create this beautiful, like cover crops. What's not in crops in this farm is cover cropped. And yet the way to get to the next thing is that cover crop needs to be terminated one way or another. Either you plant something that's warm season that's going to die in the frost, or you plant something that is going to require tillage and you turn it under, you created green manure, but the biology breaks that down and now it's creating the nutrients for the next crop. So part of the letting go is always understanding that you're not giving up something completely. Sometimes the nutrients from that are going to feed the next thing. That is that energy returned on energy invested.
Ooh, I love that, Ryan. And what actually where my mind went, I sit with people as they're dying. And at that moment, when there's a real kind of quality of attention and presence, it's not even experience of letting go. I'm going to be hard pressed to try to explain it, because how do you let go when there's nowhere to go? When you're just being with what is a very natural, and actually I feel very beautiful, part of being alive. One of the women I'm sitting with now, she says, "Don't you feel really sad every time you come visit me and I'm complaining and we know where this is headed?" I said, "No, I don't. I never feel stressed in that situation. I only feel an attunement to presence and gratitude, like you talked about." I don't know that I would have made the connection, but it makes a lot of sense to me that gratitude and presence would go hand in hand. And you're paying attention to what is happening and appreciating whatever it is that's happening, including death in this moment. That there's a feeling of aliveness that accompanies that experience. Yeah, I never feel, I said to her, "No, I never feel upset. I never feel depressed when I leave. I only feel grateful that you've allowed me into this really precious part of your life."
Is some of that because when you walk into that work, you already know what the outcome is. So is there a bit of pre-letting go? You're not going to get attached to a different outcome at that point.
I mean, in a way, that's all of life. We always know where it's going to go eventually. And I say that I'm not pessimistic at all, but in the sense of, we always know there's an end to this season of being, in this body, in this lifetime. We always, in fact, it's the only thing that we know, is that there will be an end. So I don't feel like there's any kind of preparation that I do. I go back and forth on this too, because I know, and I shared this in my podcast before, like I had different experiences with my own parents' dying processes. It didn't have quite the same feeling, partly because there was a lot of grief mixed in and, exhaustion and all the things. But now, I don't know. Death to me feels so honest. We know in that moment what's not going to be happening, which is to stay attached to life the way it is. And I find that to be such a profound relief, that we don't have to act as if something else is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like letting, I haven't thought about this in a long time. One of the things I did before I deployed is I set a pretty, in my will, I had instructions of the party I wanted my wife to throw. I collect bourbon and rye whiskeys. At the time, I was doing a lot of ultra running, and I, get these people together, like meet here, go for a run. And I remember before I made my first deployment to Iraq, I think I had 3 weeks of leave or something. I had some extra leave built up that time around that I didn't get when I took over the rifle company. And I went around the country and visited friends in different places and hung out. And just had a good time. And I thought, I want to put everything in place and I had all my financials in place, had my will, had my instructions for the party. It was kind of this crazy unburdening. You're like, okay, well, and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I was on the phone Sunday evening with a Navy SEAL that I worked with in Iraq that I haven't talked to in 19 years. Like a strange mutual connection put us together. And we've been trying to make this phone call, and it was really interesting to trace back into time. And, he's still in the teams very high up as a Navy captain. And, a lot of that, it's leadership and politics and administration and solving problems at that level. And he's like, I miss the simplicity of those days.
Yeah.
He's like, you have mission. And he's like, there's no emails. There's no bills. You don't care about laundry. No, you don't have to mow the yard. There's nothing else. You are stripped down to the bare essentials. You do a job, you find some food, you sleep when you can, take care of your people, wake up and repeat. And that stripping down to the essentials is, I think that's some of the nostalgia, and that's part of the combat high, is you get back here and you're like, wow, life is theoretically easier, but it's so much more complicated.
Right.
And it's funny, it's like, facing death was like that. Not to be cavalier about it, because there were definitely times where it's like, you got close enough, you're like, yeah, I'd like to avoid that. I'm gonna keep my head down right now.
Yeah, no, I think about this author, Suleika Jawad, who wrote this book Between Two Kingdoms, and she leukemia, and she said, when she survived leukemia, and she's since had other episodes, but the first one was in her 20s. So when I survived, I didn't really know how not to be sick. I didn't know how not to be in the hospital. There was a rhythm to it. It made sense. I'd been there for so long. You kind of forget what it's like to be in the world. And a question I ask myself a lot, because it's an interesting thing that happens when you have close contact with death, which I experienced through my parents dying at, fairly young. My mom in her 60s and my dad in his early 70s. And in the sense of the preciousness of oh, this outfit I'm wearing, it has an expiration date. The feeling of that has brought me into a kind of presence that asks me to be with what is actually happening right now. And if I can, to not be pushed to the brink of that kind of circumstance, whether it's illness, whether it's war, whatnot, to be with it in the moment. And it's extremely challenging. And one of the things I'm taking from what you've shared and that it resonates is when there's that redistribution of energy to those things that are most essential, which we already know what they are, connection to a sense of purpose, which purpose could be, I get up in the morning and I'm just going to do the best I can on something that's meaningful. It's like, it doesn't have to be more grandiose than that. When we strip it down, there's also this surplus of energy and a surplus of availability to revelation, to what we can't know ahead of time, we can't predict. That's what I'm working toward. If that, maybe that's the purpose for the rest of my life, is how to strip away as much noise as I possibly can to be with the most creative thing that's available, which is this moment.
Where you're getting the highest energy return for your energy invested. The purpose thing is interesting because I identified so strongly with it from that conference where I first learned the wellbeing framework and used that in a lot of workshops. And then more recently, it was in Dave Evans, Bill Burnett, so the guys that did Designing Your Life. And they actually talk about some psychological research around, a lot of people don't find purpose until they hit midlife or later. You're sort of working nose to the grindstone, head down, and you're You're trying to get to the next rung on the ladder. And so they were very cautious about, let's not lock people into purpose. And I've seen it happen in workshops where people will get a little bit uneasy about not finding purpose. And it certainly has happened. It happens to veterans. Like it's like, now what? Like, my specialty is locate, close with, and destroy things. Like, what do I do now with that skill set and that energy? And one of the things I stumbled on, and I've kind of had to figure out for myself, was like, don't worry about purpose if you don't know it right now, because it evolves. I mean, it evolves as we age, if we have kids and raise, as you're a parent, like, your purpose over that time changes, your purpose in your work changes. But I feel like if you spend your time in the other elements between expanding awareness, can you be present in the moment? Can you be aware of what's going on inside you and outside of you? Can you WTF yourself? Can you, why this feeling? Okay. And then the relationships of, can you nurture relationships? You're not going to recreate, this is to the veterans, of like, you're not going to recreate the relationships you had in the military, because you're not going to recreate those circumstances again. It's really learning to create great relationships wherever you go. And it's the Harvard study of adult development. Shortenly, it's known as the Grant study, but it's been going on. It started in the 30s with graduating classes of 42, 43, and 44. So it followed those men, privileged white males, because these are people that got into Harvard in the 30s, throughout their lives. And despite that relatively high socioeconomic status, not all were very successful. And even if they were outwardly successful, some of them still did not have a high quality of life. And one of the things that came out of these every so many decades reports from that longitudinal study was that the quality of relationships determines your quality of life. And so that's what I tell people, is like, look, if you don't know what your purpose is right now, don't worry. Focus on relationships and awareness. Somewhere in there, your purpose it'll knock on your door one of these days. You'll be like, oh, between these people and these things, like this is what I do. This is what I bring to the table. This is where I should be putting my energy.
That even, to me, begs the question, is our purpose in our relationships and in our presence? Maybe that's enough. It doesn't have to be purpose towards something. It just is our quality of being in every moment, our ability to cultivate gratitude, to build connection, to see what's there when we're not attached to stories and outcomes. Maybe that's the whole game. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be more than that. I think that's part of the purpose machine and the story we're told, is that you've got to have some higher purpose, when actually a really meaningful life is one where we're available, we're open, we're noticing. When we do get triggered, we can say, well, what is this feeling? And pivot without losing all of our energy. Like, maybe that's the whole thing.
Yeah, a few years ago, I was overhauling my tractor in my parents' shop in Illinois, because that's the shop I had access to. And so, it helps to make trips down there and help out every so often. But I was doing a lot of driving back and forth, and they're 4.5-hour drives. And I was audiobooking Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And at some point, when he gets into the point, and of course not the guy to audiobook when you're on a boring drive down Interstate 39, because you will fall asleep. But he said, your purpose is whatever you are doing right now. Give your energy to whatever has to be done now. That is your purpose. It's not the thing you have to get this done so you can go back to doing your purpose. If you got to do dishes, then put your full purpose into doing the dishes. I literally heard that, and I turned off the CD player. Yep, still listening to CDs. And like, that was it. I think I drove for the next 3 hours in total silence, just watching the landscape. And because people are like, oh my God, you did that through Illinois. I was like, yeah. And I've done that quite a bit. I do a lot of driving for what I do with this work, because I give presentations in Missouri and the Dakotas and, and right now I'll drive, and it's amazing that I can now drive for 6-8 hours and not necessarily listen to anything or do the audiobook podcast thing. Sometimes I can drive in silence and just notice the landscape and be completely okay with that.
I mean, that reminds me of what you talked about, the stripped down existence of there's no email, there's no this, there's no that. I know I need to get up. I know I have to eat. I have to not get killed and protect my people. That feels like, in a small scale of that presence to my purpose is what I'm doing right now. It has a similar, at least in my own system, a similar energetic quality.
Yeah, it does.
Ryan, you are a fascinating human. Honest to God, we've literally scratched the surface of who you are, where you've been, what you know, and how you feel. So maybe there's some there's no doubt some future conversations that we'll have. In the meantime, though, I'm imagining people hearing you talk and relating to you in all different ways, whether this is someone working in veteran affairs, or maybe a veteran themselves, maybe someone who's in farming, maybe somebody who's in organizations. It's like, wow, this guy's got an interesting take. How can people get in touch with you?
So Ryan at odysseycollaborations.com. Sorry, long website and email, but that's how to find me. Or the farm is Ryan at odyssey.farm. That's me, and I am old school enough that I don't do a lot on social media. That's pretty much for the farm. Otherwise, that's how to find me.
Sweet. Well, we can put the link to the farm, your email, and also you've a consulting practice and a coaching practice that we could also share with folks.
Yeah, and that's the Odyssey Collaborations, because I think it is everything is a journey, and it's always working together with somebody.
Thank you, Ryan. I love this. I love the conversation, and I'm already looking forward to when we'll be able to connect again.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to the next one as well.
And thanks to everyone who's listening. I'm curious how you'll take this in and reflect on the ways that being present to what's happening right now may unleash wells of creativity and energy you may not even know you had. I look forward to seeing you again in future episodes. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. To learn more about the podcast, my work, and how I can support you on your journey of spiritual becoming, head over to the Together in Beauty website or email me at rebecca@together-in-beauty.com. It's an honor to accompany you on the journey. A huge thank you to our multi-talented producer and co-creative director, Mapumba Cilombo. To learn more about Mapumba's work as a producer, sound engineer, and musician, check out the show notes for a link to his website at mapumbamusic.com. And as always, many thanks to you, our listeners. None of this would be possible without the energy, encouragement, and vitality that you reflect back to us each week. Until next time, may you walk in beauty.